Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
Hello, travelers. PA Nightmares here. I've noticed that over 30% of my viewers are not subscribed to the channel. So, if you're a new or a returning viewer and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you like what I do, liking the video and commenting as well, as it really helps push this video into the algorithm and it really does help the channel grow. Well, I've taken enough of your time. On to the main event.
Sitting on the couch, Mr. and Ms. Jackson sipped their morning coffee. The morning was cold, and they had just had a decent snowstorm and Mr. Jackson had to go out and shovel the driveway. But before that, they would watch the morning news to see what the weather report would be like for the rest of the week. It was almost Christmas, and he had to ensure that the weather did not have any intention of canceling the holiday plans. The weatherman came on the TV. Alright folks, the weather is looking clear for the rest of the week. We'll have a nice white Christmas, so get those mittens and sleds out, go out and make a snowman or even have a snowball fight, and enjoy the holiday season. And of course, a very Merry Christmas. Right after the weather segment of the news ended, it flipped back over to the anchors. They both wore somber expressions on their faces. The news anchors started speaking. We just want to remind you to lock your doors and windows. The Christmas Eve killer is still on the loose. This year marks the 6th year the cops have been on the lookout for this person. If you see anything out of the ordinary, inform your local police departments. Mr. and Ms. Jackson looked at one another, and the concern was evident on their faces. We will need to take extra care and ensure that the house is locked and that the kids are safe, Ms. Jackson said. Mr. Jackson kissed his wife on the forehead. Oh, honey, I love you, but you worry too much. The odds of this so-called Christmas Eve killer coming to our little town, they're slim. You need not worry. Okay, I'm gonna go shovel now. The sooner I start, the sooner I get it done. Walking out the door, he made his way over to the shed. Unlocking it, he grabs the shovel and makes his way to the driveway. It was not large, but they had gotten a foot of snowfall last night, so it would take him a little while to finish. Taking a deep breath, he always loved the snow and the cold. It was enjoyable for him. He was born the day after Christmas, so when it got cold, he felt at home. Getting to work, he started at the top of the driveway and worked his way down. He noticed most of his neighbors would start from the bottom up, but the only year that he tried that, about the time he was finished with the bottom section of the driveway, a plow truck came by and blocked it off. So, from then on, he just shoveled from top to bottom. After hours of hard work, he finally came to the bottom of the driveway and finished up. Just as he was finishing, he noticed something sitting on the top of his mailbox. And since he would have to shovel that out as well, he might as well go check it out. Getting to the mailbox, he noticed that it was one of those elves on the shelf that everyone was always going on about. He smiled, knowing that his daughter would love it, but his son would be horrified by it. So he took the elf, placed it in his pocket, and shoveled out the mailbox as planned. Finishing his task, he noticed it had become early afternoon by the sun's placement in the sky. Walking back inside, he placed a kiss on his wife's cheek. Hey, honey, look what I found outside on the mailbox. He pulled out the elf doll he found with an evil smile on his face, and his wife looked at him. Throw that thing away now. You know that Jay is scared of elves, she sternly told him. "Oh, come on, honey. It's just a little fun, and Ellie would love it. We just have a few days until Christmas Eve, and it would be fun for her." She conceded and let him keep the thing with the caveats that he was to keep it away from Jay. Mr. Jackson took the elf and placed it on the shelf in the next room. He intended on showing his daughter after lunch. His wife finished up lunch and he called down his children. However, as his daughter came running into the kitchen past the elf, it fell to her feet. Ellie squealed in delight as she picked the thing up. Her brother screamed in fear and ran into the kitchen, using Mr. Jackson as a shield from the thing. Ellie runs over to her brother, tormenting him with the damned elf. Ms. Jackson sees this, strides over to the daughter, and grabs it from her weak grasp. Ms. Jackson places it on top of the refrigerator, and the family proceeds to have lunch. The conversation at the table was sparse for the first half of the meal, but as tempers calmed and more level heads prevailed, Mr. Jackson suggested that they all go outside and enjoy the day. Ms. Jackson liked the idea of getting the kids out of the house and hoped that they would forget about the creepy elf. She didn't want to admit it to her husband, but that thing gave her the creeps. Finishing up their lunch, they all got ready to go out and have a family day in the snow. Getting outside, the kids immediately started to build a snowman together. They quickly forgot about the earlier squabble. As Mr. and Ms. Jackson watched the children, they smiled. This was one of the best things about being parents, seeing the joy on your kids' faces. There was no better feeling. Mr. Jackson got bored after a while, and he made a snowball and threw it at his son's head. Jay spun around and looked at his dad. He had a smile on his face as he stood behind Jay's mother. Mr. Jackson was pointing his finger at his wife to say it was her. Jay smiled wide and shouted, "Oh yeah, Mom? Take this!" He throws the freshly made snowball at his mother, hitting her in the face. An all-out snowball war started and lasted for hours. Realizing the sun was beginning to sink low and that it was growing late, they all went back inside. Heading into the kitchen, Ms. Jackson started to make dinner while Mr. Jackson sat on the couch watching some TV, and as he sat there, was drifting off into sleep. The next thing he knew, he heard a blood-curdling scream come from his son's room. Jumping up off the sofa, he ran to his son's room and shouted, "Jay, what's wrong?" His son looked up at him with tears in his eyes. "The elf moved himself into my room all on his own." Mr. Jackson looked at his son as he tried to explain. "The elf can't move on its own, son. Someone had to have moved the elf into your room. And I'm pretty sure I know who it was as well." Mr. Jackson gets up and walks out of his son's room, making sure to take the elf with him. Marching over to his daughter's room, he opens the door, throws the elf down onto his daughter's bed, and shouts, "What the hell do you think you're doing, Ellie? This is not okay, and it's not funny. You scared the hell out of your brother with your little trick." His daughter looked at him and was on the brink of tears when she spoke. "Dad, I didn't put that in Jay's room. Last time I saw it was when Mom put it on top of the refrigerator." Her dad watched her, and she was now crying where he thought she was lying. He hugged her and said, "It's okay, just don't do it again, okay? Your brother is scared of elves and you know this. So, just don't torment your brother with this thing or I'll throw it out. Okay, sweetie? I love you. Please be good. I will not tell your mom about this time, but if it happens again, you will be in trouble." Mr. Jackson walks out of his daughter's room and heads back to the living room. Sitting back on the sofa, he turned the TV back on and continued to watch TV. Shortly after, his wife called him and the kids in for dinner. Mr. Jackson could hear both of his kids coming down the stairs. First to get to the table was Ellie. She seemed to be worried that her mother was going to scold her, but her father just gave her a playful wink, and she relaxed a bit. A few minutes later, Jay came into the kitchen. You could tell that he was noticeably nervous, looking around the kitchen, expecting something to jump out at him. Ms. Jackson noticed this and asked if he was all right. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm just not feeling the best is all, Jay tells his mother. His mom comes over and puts her hand on his forehead. Oh, well, you don't feel feverish, but you do seem pale. You should get to bed early. A good night's rest will do you wonders. Jay smiles weakly at his mother. Yeah, Mom, I'll do that. Can we eat now? This looks amazing. Ms. Jackson puts all the food on the table and sits down. They take turns passing the food around the table. They had pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and fresh baked bread. As they enjoyed the food, they reflected on the day and how much fun it was. Family days like this were far and few in between, which just made them all the more special. After finishing up dinner, the kids got ready for bed as Mr. and Ms. Jackson washed the dishes and cleaned up from dinner. The kids went and got ready for bed. Once all the chores were finished, Mr. and Ms. Jackson went up to tuck the kids in. Good night, you two. They kissed them on the head and, as they left the room, shut off the light and shut the door. The kids fell asleep quickly, but Ellie woke up around midnight. She had to use the bathroom and needed a drink of water. Ellie gets up and walks down the stairs to get a glass of water. She walked over to the cabinet where they kept the cups. Since she was still just a little too short to reach them, but did not want to wake her parents, she stood on her tippy toes, finally managing to open the cabinet. However, in the process, she knocked over the container her parents used to keep the sugar in. It fell off the counter and hit the floor. The container broke, spilling its contents all over the floor. The house was dead quiet, and she expected to hear her parents come running down the stairs, but she heard nothing. So she went to the closet to get a broom and dustpan. However, upon returning to the kitchen, she sees a small figure looming over the broken sugar container. Ellie turned on the lights and screamed. The elf on the shelf was knelt over the spilled sugar, slowly counting each grain of the sugar. After Ellie was finished screaming, her parents could be heard running down the stairs. They got to the kitchen and asked her what was wrong. Ellie points at the elf, screaming. It's alive! She points at the elf that lay on the ground motionless. Ms. Jackson bends down and takes her daughter's hand. Honey, the elf is not alive. You probably knocked it off the counter when you spilled the sugar, and when you came back to clean it up, you saw it on the floor and thought that it was alive. It was just a trick of your mind, Ms. Jackson explained to her daughter. Mr. Jackson said, Let's get this mess cleaned up and get back to bed. In the back of his mind, he wondered how the elf got down here when he left it in his daughter's room. But he just figured that she must have brought it down with her and forgot. So, after he and Ellie finished cleaning up the sugar and the glass, they went back to bed. Tucking his daughter in, he told her that she would no longer have to worry about the elf. He would throw it out tomorrow after he got up. Placing a kiss on her head, Mr. Jackson said, I love you, honey. Sleep well. And with that, he closed her door and took the elf into the bedroom with him. Throwing the elf in the corner of the room, he gets into bed with his wife. Mr. Jackson said, You were right, honey. Bringing that elf into the house was a bad idea. After we get up tomorrow, it's getting thrown out. Rolling over, he drifted off to sleep. Mr. Jackson hears a strange sound right before he hits his deep sleep. He rolls over and groggily nudges his wife. Hey, do you hear that? Mr. Jackson asks. His wife gave no response, so he shook her harder. Her limp body rolled over. Her throat was ripped out. Mr. Jackson screamed and the elf jumped on him. The elf had grown. He was much larger now than he was before. He was roughly the size of a large house cat. The elf spoke for the first time and last time that Mr. Jackson would hear. You invited me into your home, and now I'm going to claim my prizes. Your souls will be ours and feed my family for the foreseeable future. The elf pulls out a jar and rips out his throat much like the elf had done to his wife. As the life faded from Mr. Jackson, he saw the glowing aura of his soul being sealed into the jar. The children woke up the following day. They opened their parents' door, ran into their parents' room, and were greeted with the sight of the mangled corpses of their parents. In the middle of screaming, they saw the elf on the shelf covered in blood. It looked up at them. "I have what I came for, and now I'll be leaving." It ran down the stairs and out the doggy door. Jay called the cops and said the elf on the shelf killed their parents. Upon getting to the house, the cops went to the parents' room. They looked at one another and spoke. Looks like the Christmas Eve killer struck again. But I don't understand why the kids always say the fucking elf on the shelf did it, though.
I would like to thank tonight's author or authors for allowing me to use their works. If you enjoyed this, the author's links will be in the description below. Please check them out and let them know PA sent you. Also, if you like to walk around representing my realm and gaining new travelers, the links to my merch store, my website, and all my other social medias will be in the description below. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to all my lovely Patreons. All of their names will appear on screen. I'll make sure to put all their links in the description below so you guys can check them out as well if you'd like.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.